certainly with Keenan Lewis. Kikaha is gone. Wilson is gone. Nick Fairley is starting to get hurt, injured. I wouldn't even play him in preseason. Very little because he's got a propensity of getting hurt, and that is the thing that's going to derail the Saints. The Saints do not have the depth that when these key defensive players go out, that they can automatically absorb them or to the degree like the Seahawks or the Cardinals or the Panthers. And so that is where now I'm beginning to get concerned with this defense, because now you're starting to hear the injuries mounting up, and that is an alarming area that I hope this trend ceases and stops rather quickly.
Yeah, well, it's a physical game, man, and injuries are to be expected. But like you said, the concern is the depth. Who is going to really fill in when some of the major, either a vet or one of the major starters are going to go down? And guys, it will happen, unfortunately, right, Coach?
Oh, absolutely. That's an integral part of the game. Injuries are certainly going to be a factor, but it necessitates, and when I say it's an integral part of the game, it necessitates an organization that not only can identify and acquire, but develop depth. That is a big part of the game. It's not just 11 on 11. It's 53 against 53 every week. And you've got to have you're going to have people go down. The Saints, at this point, really are about average in the number of people that have gone down so far. And they've got to, once again, by the first week of the season against Oakland, they've got to have not only healthy but well-trained people. You're constantly having to try to balance that out. That you could not do anything and have
all right, Saints
healthy.
Fans and who down. Sorry about that.
But you've got to be able to have them prepared to play to the best of their ability. Nick Fairley is an important part of that. When he's healthy and his mind is right, and he gives an effort every play. And that's been one of his biggest issues all the way back in college, that he would give you an inconsistent effort. And now he's at a situation, if he can't give an effort every play now, then his time in the league going forward is going to be somewhat limited. So he's got some incentive going forward, and he is in better condition from all indications. Certainly during the mini camps, it was obvious that he was in much better shape than he was previously. But he's an important player, because for the Saints in their defense, they're going to have a player that predominantly plays on the center, and you're going to have a player who predominantly plays on the outside shoulder of the guard, a three technique. And those two positions flip-flop. And so you're going to need some big
Saints
guys.
fans and
who's got to be able to play and the like. So there's big issues there.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Coach Barry had wrote in his blog, The Big Easy Believer, that there's been a lot of questions about how the Saints are going to really shape up this year. There are a lot of veterans that won't make the final roster cut. But the one guy that keeps sticking out in my mind as this battle for the kicking spot is going to really be crucial for the Saints. And I know, Professor, you have talked about it, and BB, you brought up, I believe last week, talked about how Connor Barth has been kicking pretty well, but Forbath has been doing pretty well. So I'm ready to see how these guys perform in the preseason action as well. So that's going to be something I'm going to keep my eye on. If we're going to have some ability to see how these guys are able to kick far and make sure their field goal attempts are doing pretty well. So let's keep an eye on that as well. Okay, guys, I have a question for you. One writer said that Sean Payton will be fired at the end of this year. How do you feel about one of our members of the media corps writing something to this nature? And they have even taken the field.
I'll be honest with you. If the Saints finish 7-9, he should be fired. I don't have no problem with that, because if this team finish anything less than 9-7, I'm telling you, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, because they extended his contract, and then you've had 3 straight years. And I don't know too many coaches that keep their jobs if you have another year where you finish below 500. I just don't know that many.
I know. Look at
I'm
Lovie
not saying
Smith.
that he should be fired, but I'm just saying that, as I stated when we did the season debut, if he can't turn this around this year, I'm not saying that he can't ever turn around, but I think that, and I said this at the end of last season, I personally feel, this will be the telling tale of him as a coach, I don't know if Coach Payton has exhausted all that he can do with the Saints. I just firmly believe he may have 10 years is a long time for an NFL coach to have stayed with one team, and we know he missed 1 year. But I wouldn't be surprised, especially if the Saints have a abysmal season, like they go 5-11 or 4-12, and just I don't know how, But I know Tom Benson is loyal to him, so I don't think Tom Benson will fire him. Coach Payton may walk away, but I don't think Tom Benson will fire him.
Anyone else on that?
I think a lot of.
Go ahead.
All right, I think a lot of crazy articles are written and a lot of crazy predictions are written before the season starts, before anything happens. Just another example is there's a writer on this panel who wrote that the Saints receiving core of this year has the potential to go down as the greatest ever. I wrote that, yes, but is it a crazy outlook and trying to look at it from a different perspective and make people think that that is an actual possibility? Of course. I'm not going to think much of it if a writer says Peyton's going to get fired at the end of the year. It's a prediction. It's a way for people to read your article and a way to get people to kind of think your way or think outside of the box. I agree with the professor. If the Saints have another terrible season and then go 7-9, if not worse, maybe there are some questions in the year that maybe Peyton has done everything he possibly can with this unit. But I'm not going to think of it much more than it's somebody who is going out on a limb and saying, this is what's going to happen, and here's why. Try to open somebody's mind up to something maybe they've never thought about before.
Yeah. And I think, was it bookmaker.eu? It's a betting site. They have the odds that it's favorable against Sean Payton remaining the New Orleans Saints coach at the end of the season. So, all right, guys, let's kind of wrap it up here. The Saints face the Patriots on tomorrow. Any juggernaut things that the fans need to keep an eye on, Professor? I guess that means no. How about you, Coach? Anything they need to pay attention to, Coach?
It's difficult just watching it on TV or even looking at just the TV copy to try to look at player matchups in a sense that when a player does something really good, you need to take a look at who he did it against. Whether he did it because he made a really good play or was athletic, what did his real ability showing up, or was it because he was against an inferior player? So we're going to see some players that are going to make plays and end up getting cut, and other players will barely notice who'll end up making the team, because it's hard to see from our perspective who they're actually doing it against. But I'm going to try to take a look, especially at the athleticism, at the linebacking positions, who how was that position improved, and see in overall defensively how much athletic improvement they've had at those positions.
Good point. I mean, Cooks had a good little bit. I think the first touchdown reception over Malcolm Butler, right? So, yeah, that was a first against a first. But if you have a first against a third or fourth guy and he's like all world out there, is that really saying much, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good point. I'm going to really concentrate on the special teams, Coach, and I really would like to see, like I said earlier, what's going to happen with the kicking battle, but also how these guys are going to perform special teams wise. Usually, sometimes you have a guy that comes out of nowhere and makes the team on special teams and then becomes a star player for the team, So I can think of a situation when Terrell Davis, who played for the Broncos, remember he was like lingering on the low on the depth chart for the Broncos the first couple of preseason games, but then he made that one fantastic play in Japan and opened the eyes of the coach. And then next thing you know, this guy was starting for the Broncos and leading those guys to a Super Bowl. So I'm not saying that's going to happen for the Saints guys, but special teams is a very important part of the whole team. And Coach, I know you believe in that. How about you, Bree?
I think the one thing I'm going to look at, quick note actually, is right before we get on the air, Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, and Julian Edelman will not be playing tomorrow. So just a note for Saints fans.
And we should not have Drew Brees playing, in my opinion, but go on.
And the other thing I was about to get to that was Jeff Duncan reported on before we got on the air as well, is Brees is expected to play one series, and then Luke McCown expected to play just the rest of the quarters. So we might actually see Garrett Grayson for 3 quarters.
Okay.
But I'm really looking at Garrett Grayson. I think at times we've heard things about Garrett where coach has not been fond of Garrett Grayson at all, and he's looked just terrible. But we've also heard of times where Garrett Grayson has looked like a guy that should have been drafted in the 3rd round last year. I'm going to be watching the receiving battle. We talked about it a little bit earlier on the air. R.J. Harris, Tommy Lee Lewis. I'm really excited to hear all the hype or see all the hype about Michael Thomas after hearing about it for as long as we have. Looking at Coleman, I'm just looking at that entire receiving core in general to see who's going to stand out. And I think going way back into the show, we said earlier that there are going to be guys that'll make extremely great plays but won't make the team. And I think Coach just said that a couple minutes ago too. I'm looking at guys in recent memory. Preston Parker was a guy for the Saints who had a few touchdowns in the preseason but didn't end up making the team as a receiver. I'm just curious to see which receiver is going to step up, have some big plays, and I'm curious which guy on this team is going to just come out of nowhere and find a roster spot because of special teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I concur with you, man. That's very important. Professor, one last nugget from you as far as what to look out for? Again, silence from the professor, guys. You heard that first here on Saints News. I don't ever think we're going to get silence from the professor this season, but thank God it's happened today. So anyway, Coach and BB.
Yeah, the professor's saying, show me.
Yeah.
Just show me.
So
it's like he said from the beginning. I don't want any more talk.
Kyle, I had you on mute. I had you on mute, Kyle, because your head's so big that it was knocking out my sound. I said David Lasco is a player that you need to keep an eye on. I would love to see him play behind the number 2 line because the Saints are notable for finding star running backs, and I would like to see him get a lot of time because I have a funny feeling that there's a hidden treasure there, and if the Saints are not careful, they'll miss out on something. So I want to see him play.
Yeah, that battle between Lasco